Welcome to Life on Earth. Welcome to Life on Earth.
Question authority. Welcome to Life on Earth, and thank you for joining me. Now, really, Life on Earth, this show is usually about life on Earth, and it will be, and I will talk about life on Earth, but I've got a question. Whatever happened to the better left? And I mean the rebels. I mean, the punk rockers, or even the peace and love types, which was more my style. Whatever happened to the better liberals, the more liberal liberals, the live and let live types? When they asserted, question authority, don't let the man keep you down. Did they mean it? Who are the rebels? Who are the revolutionaries, the anti-authoritarians today? Okay, so I was sitting around in the dark because we lost our power this week. The big corporate megalopoly let us down. We got no electricity in the house. So I'm sitting around in the, okay, we have lights, of course. We have LED lights. We have all this technology. And we have candles. The world's best beeswax candles. Go to Aurum Naturals, AURUM Naturals. Anyway, in kind of the dark and, kind of romantic. And I'm sitting around with my favorite objectivist in the world. I think you know who that is. And she brought up the idea of contemporary liberals and leftists, or the left, compared to a couple decades ago or a few decades ago. What they used to advocate and what they should go back to. And specifically, she asked, whatever happened to question authority? Being a few years older than my favorite objectivist, the slogans of my youth started coming back to me, going back to the late 60s, the hippies. I was just a wee thing then, but I remember at least the era well enough. And the slogans were great. It was question authority, resist, but also make love, not war. Who could argue with that? Peace and love. Think for yourself. Don't let the man keep you down. Give peace a chance and screw the establishment. Remember back when it was still called the establishment, and live and let live. And some that have survived to today even, think globally, act locally. And I will not comply. Now, if you think this is old, well, you're right. But if you think it has no analog today, then think again. Think of the indie film industry or indie television shows, independent art. Much of the wider art world and a lot of the world in general lives on. They live this stuff, and it informs their decisions and their actions and their political actions. The other day, there was a kid on my social networks. Now, of course, to me, a kid means anybody more than 10 years younger than me. But there's a kid on the social networks, and he's posting a meme making a point with the dude. And that might just as well have been Jay and Silent Bob, or Napoleon Dynamite, or something from Juno and Ellen Page, who's now Elliot Page. Gender bending. Gender bending is so old. Everybody wants to treat this like it's a new thing because it got all political, but we've been bending genders since Liberace and Elton John and David Bowie, and I could go on with that. But the point is that even these icons who, some of these are 10, 20 years old, but the whole, the dude and Jay and Silent Bob and Napoleon Dynamite and all of this indie theater, it's just the new, but really archetypical hippies. Everything old is new again. It's retro. Except if you go back 20, 30 years, there were at least some liberals who still believed in liberty, at least in some areas of life. Freedom of speech. You can't tell me what I can't and can't say. Well, that's gone. Free speech, and even silence is violence. Question authority. The last 3 years, under lockdowns and mandates, taught us better than to expect that from the left. And I'm all for acknowledging the experts who said, well, here's what you should do. See the show notes for the podcasts by ARI and Harry Binswanger on the topic of experts. I'm all for experts. But lockdowns, mandates, besides abortion rights, what liberties are the liberals fighting for anymore? And abortion rights is a very big deal right now, so I've got to give them at least, a little bit of props for that. In accordance with Ayn Rand's essay, The Establishing of an Establishment, reprinted in Philosophy Who Needs It, the left are the authorities now. Question authority. This used to be synonymous with think for yourself. Well, to the left now, question authority means blind rebellion or anarchy. We are the authorities. You should listen to us now. Imagine that in the late 60s when students would have sit-ins or protests or rallies against who? Well, the war in Vietnam, but who were they protesting against? Their own leftist professors were being locked out of their offices. That classic split between the better liberals, consider the colleges versus the churches. Science, the progressives used to claim to be for progress. And you saw that because for the longest time, conservatives were anti-science. They're still anti-evolution. They're still, of course, anti-birth control. The conservatives want to conserve, but the progressives wanted progress. There was, think of the optimism of the 80s and even the 60s and the 70s, and the Tomorrowland and Epcot Center, and then the pro-reason and pro-science, even though they were also going off the rails. Have you even seen a glimmer of that in the last 30 years? So who are the rebels? Who are the revolutionaries, the anti-authoritarians today? Within objectivism, there's a lot of answers. There are many answers. And the developments over the last few years have been pretty damn awesome. Just the obvious one, because, we're talking about, well, what has changed? The Ayn Rand Center UK did not exist, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And the massive worldwide phenomenon that it is now, with the YouTube channels as well as the meetups. Well, the meetups have always been there, but the in conjunction with the Ayn Rand Con, the actual conventions, and Clubhouse and all of the other activity, it's all new. Heck, I just joined their Clubhouse channel about this time last year, early last year. Bottom line, 2-3 years ago, Ayn Rand Center UK was just the Ayn Rand Center UK. Now it's a worldwide phenomenon. It has a role to play that might not be as authoritative as the Ayn Rand Institute, but it's right up there in terms of impact. Consider daily shows, daily objective, Monday through Friday, but also all of the other shows, of which I'm proud to be a small part. So yes, within objectivism, there are many answers to what has changed, what has developed, and what are the improvements, and they're awesome. Most recently, Andrew Bernstein just released his book. I'm going to bring up my note here because I don't want to get the title wrong. It's long. Why Johnny Still Can't Read or Write or Understand Math, and What We Can Do About It. That just came out yesterday, which I haven't read it yet. You think he would have sent me a preview copy? Guess he wants the money. I'll have to order it and I'll do a review. And other outstanding works within objectivism, fighting exactly the kind of trends that I'm concerned about here. The new left, the new right, the new left, and the new right. Because, of course, on the right, the phenomena are all new too. Nobody would have foreseen, other than, I guess, if you read the dim hypothesis, would have foreseen Donald Trump and what comes next after Donald Trump, which is the real scary stuff. But my point here is there's a new middle of the chat. Dinosaurs are greater than God. You're absolutely right. Of course, Apollo Zeus says there's no such thing as a dinosaur. If you really are Apollo Zeus, you would have been around in the time of the dinosaurs. So don't even try that. Oh, real quick, since I'm looking at the chat, where's the super chat? Where's the money? I want to see the money. I want to see the money come in. It doesn't go to me. It goes to the Ayn Rand Center UK. A worthy enterprise. So yes, by all means, if you have any questions or just comments you want to stand out, please put a couple dollars on them. Everything that you do supports ARC UK. If you're not already, make sure you become a member by going to aynrandcenter.co.uk. And a lot of you are also members on the YouTube channel, where you can make another donation once a month to get access to special features, special videos, of course, the fun special icons. I see the little blue star by your comments there. I know you all are members. That is super cool. So thank you for that. And again, a lot of great stuff in objectivism, even though the left has, I was going to say, lost their way. Did they know their way? Did they have a way? Again, as my partner in crime has pointed out, you know, I'm talking about you. She said decades ago, they were still resist authority. Now, you know that I have kind of a hippy dippy background. So when I think of the hippies, I don't think of dirty, smelly, and nihilists and irrational. I just think peace and love. And Amy has a punk rock background. But when she thinks of punk rock, she doesn't mean blind rebellion. She means rebellion against things that need to be rebelled against and fighting for freedom, fighting for better ideas. Do we see that anymore? Well, what I see now, and here's the good news. Oh, and Allie is in the super chat. Thank you for that. She says, what are you drinking? Good job. Make a cameo. I should do that. I should make a Cameo account. I don't know that I'm popular enough to get a lot of requests, but Allie, I would make you a special Cameo at a special rate, whatever you got in mind. Incidentally, what I'm drinking is coffee. Nothing that exciting. I should start drinking wine, not because I like wine, but, you know, after 5 o'clock, that's what you're supposed to do. Here's the good news. Actually, there's a lot of good news. Let's start with this bit of good news, because the question was, well, who are the rebels? Who are the revolutionaries? Who are the anti-authoritarians today? And my answer, the new middle, God, that sounds milquetoast, the new middle. What would you call the new intellectuals? So many of whom have come from the left and have abandoned them as they have become anything but liberal, anything but liberty oriented, and not just the woke phenomenon, but everything that's preceded it. You know, the new middle, they're not moderate. That's why middle's the wrong word, but I still call them the new middle because they ain't the right and they ain't the left. They're not moderate. They are complex and contextual. And even when I disagree with them, they appear to be reality minded. They are looking for the truth. So I'm talking about people like Barry Weiss and company, her whole orbit or network. Listen to her podcast honestly for the people associated with her. Out of the New York Times when she just couldn't stand their ideological approach anymore. Looking for honest answers. Look at people like Joe Rogan, who I rarely agree with, but he's fighting for many of the right things. He's an outspoken voice. He's not the left. He's certainly not the right. People like Sam Harris or Tim Ferriss or the Weinsteins, Brett and Eric Weinstein, Jonathan Haidt. This is where the conversation is happening. The people talking on Fox News, they've got a bigger viewership because all the Trump fans, you know, listen every day. They're not hearing anything new. They're not hearing anything interesting. They're not getting intellectual content. No, you're seeing that in the podcasting world. You're seeing that on YouTube. You're seeing that on the Substacks. You're seeing that and it's big. 10, 15, 20 years ago when it was, medium.com and, in the old days of MySpace, everything was fringe. Everything was fringe. Now everything is mainstream. I love it when Yaron Brook had an interview recently where the interviewer was complaining about the monopoly that Facebook has and the monopoly that Google has. He was complaining about the monopoly that Twitter has. He was complaining about the monopoly that TikTok has. And I thought, the more companies you complain have a monopoly on social media, the word monopoly doesn't mean anything if you can name 10 different companies that all have a monopoly in this. And I know they're all a little bit different, but Yaron made exactly the right point. YouTube doesn't have a monopoly. You could go to Vimeo. You could go to 20 different video posts. Well, yeah, but YouTube has more of an impact. They've got an oversized impact. You can do Facebook Live. You can, no. YouTube's got it. Or on the social networkings, well, it's all Facebook. Well, what about Twitter? Well, yeah, but Twitter, it's just amazing to me that people say these things and don't realize. So again, the new middle, the new intellectuals, in a sense, I hate to use that phrase because that should be reserved for objectivists. And we'll talk more about that too. But the new middle is they're everywhere in these spaces. They're capitalizing on this. They're getting millions of people. And the great thing about it is it's so much of it is long form content. Some kid can get 1 million people to watch his 60-second cat video on TikTok. But the people who are getting 100,000 people, think of Lex Friedman listening to a 3-hour interview. That's amazing. And that's cause for optimism. This is where the conversation is happening. Yes. Oh, yeah. Twitter soon to be adding the edit button. Yes, Allie, you're right. I saw that too. I don't know. It's good because they're doing it right in that they are making sure that there's a trail. So if somebody changes something after you've already shared it or agreed with it, and then they change it to something horrible, there are all sorts of reasons they didn't want an edit button on Twitter. But if they do it right, I'm all for it. So yeah, not everybody good will be an objectivist. If you've got the sense that for anybody to be good, there's got to be a way. What's wrong with cat videos? There's nothing wrong with cat videos. Kidding. I'm allergic to cats, so I'm biased. But no, there is nothing wrong with cat videos. Not everybody, not every great person is going to be an objectivist. Somebody posted, I guess I can say his name because he posts publicly. No, I'll leave it out. An outspoken objectivist posts on one of the socials, and among other things, he often says that you need objectivism. You need these ideas. You need a consistent ideology, a moral code, a philosophy. And one of his detractors came in and commented and said, well, but your wife, who you post about a lot, she's not an objectivist. How can you tell all of us this is important if she's not an objectivist? And I couldn't resist commenting, even though when somebody makes a semi-personal swipe like that, it's something I should stay out of. But my comments seemed to be appreciated. So, there were good and even great people before 1957. And there will be good and even great people after now who aren't objectivists. Objectivism is the owner's manual for life, but a lot of people live a reasonably good life without ever cracking the owner's manual. So yes, everybody needs philosophy. Everybody has a philosophy. And you are better off if you know what your philosophy is and it's consistent. That doesn't mean that there aren't good people out there who aren't philosophical. And more than that, I've talked about the 1 hour in a coffee shop approach before. There are objectivists. And I'm not saying anybody listening to this is like that, but maybe somebody who went on their journey discovering this philosophy. I certainly did. I read The Fountainhead in high school and thought it was good, but I didn't change my life. It made me a little better person. Picked it up in my mid-20s again, read it and thought, oh my God, this is great. I got to be more like this. This is a great novel. And then I read Atlas Shrugged, and I went from this is great to this is true. I won't go through the whole progression, but it took me a couple of years to get through enough books that I could say this is the philosophy for living on Earth. This is true. This is the philosophy of life on Earth. And then what you do is, as a new fire-breathing objectivist, you go out to the bars or the coffee shops or places where you meet people, or you talk to friends of yours or in the workplace. And you spend an hour in a coffee shop telling them about objectivism. An hour, a whole hour. And even after you have put everything you've got into those 60 minutes, that friend of yours still isn't an objectivist. He still doesn't agree with you. He still thinks you're wrong. What is wrong with him? You just spent an hour talking to this guy and he's not an objectivist yet. Now, it took me 3 years to get to that point. But 60 minutes with me should have made an impression on him. It's funny how that goes. And it seems perfectly reasonable when you're caught up in the middle of it. It's like, yeah, but I already know what all the objections are, and I already know what the hard parts were for me to get, and I'm giving it all to him. So yes, Allie says Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was a conceptual context. So not everybody that you speak to for an hour in a coffee shop will be an objectivist. And yet, good people out there. So here's what I've had to accept. My personal nostalgia for peace and love. Again, I identify as a hippie, not in any of the dirty, smelly, nihilistic, irrational ways, but just peace and love, man. My nostalgia for peace and love, for flower power. Okay, I was not a flower power guy, but live and let live. But all that notwithstanding, without respect for reason and reality, without respect for objective ethics and free laissez-faire capitalism and politics, the left were never going to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. It just wasn't going to happen. And it's a shame, because when I was a kid and I watched those Coca-Cola commercials, I really thought, why can't we? Why can't we stand on a mountain, a grassy hilltop, holding hands, and teach the world to sing in perfect harmony with a bottle of Coca-Cola in our hand? I don't know how that commercial, I got to find that commercial again, because I swear I remember everybody holding hands, but everybody also holding a bottle of Coke. Back when they were in glass bottles, that was the way. Yeah, the left isn't going to get that without explicitly advocating for reason and reality. Just as the conservative nostalgia for the 1950s, when a single income could provide for a whole family and we could have the Ozzie and Harriet lifestyle, and men were men and women knew their place. There was never going to be a shining city on the hill without leaving behind the conservative mistrust of freedom, contemporary conservatives' condemnation of global free trade, and ultimately their hatred for liberty as libertine. My favorite objectivist and I were talking about what changed in the liberals and what changed in the conservatives. This is new. This hatred of liberty, it was always something that could have grown out of the conservative Christian movement. They were always anti-pleasure. But this is new, this hatred of liberty as libertine. The idea that the founding fathers were too much in favor of liberty, that's new. See Bradley Thompson's book, America's Revolutionary Mind, A Moral History of the American Revolution and the Declaration that Defined It. Read that book for why the right hates liberty. And the libertarians, what happened there? Well, the hippies of the right. It's sad that they could have improved. They could have grown out of what Ayn Rand criticized when she called them the hippies of the right. They could have read Peter Schwartz's essay, Libertarianism, the Perversion of Liberty, and say, oh my God, we got to get grounded and stop accepting into our big tent movements that are so obviously anti-liberty. But no, the libertarians have never, and best I can tell, they will never accept reason and reality and objectivity and ethics. And they will always say, well, that stuff's all good and fine, but all we really care about for you to be a libertarian is noif, that you accept the non-initiation of force principle. You say you're for liberty, you're for liberty. Meanwhile, today's libertarians, or at least the most outspoken among them, have seen the defeat of Gary Johnson and have concluded that there's no place in the party for reason, reality, reasonable people, nice guys like Gary Johnson who have some dignity and accomplishments. Oh my God, look up Gary Johnson's bio. He was so cool. If he could only, I shouldn't say if he could only get 4.5 million votes, because that's so much more than anybody else got. You would think there would be a lesson there. Here's a guy who got 4 or 5 times what anybody else got since, I forget who was the last person to get a lot of votes, Brown or somebody. Maybe we should learn something from that. Now, is there any way to push either party? And I mean the left or the right, or the libertarians. Is there any way to push them or their adherents back onto a better, more individualist, more independent, more freedom-minded path? So my solution to that is the premise of this show, because it's all about how you choose to live life on Earth. My solution is, first of all, embrace the new thinkers. If you haven't investigated these people yet, if you haven't listened to Barry Weiss's podcast, or even semi-reasonable people, you see them not just in politics, in the intellectual science community, people like Sam Harris, the motivation self-improvement community, people like Tim Ferriss. Jordan Peterson on a good day, he can be poison, but people are speaking and they are thinking and they are addressing issues in ways that you're not going to see on CNN and you're not going to see on Fox News. So embrace these new thinkers and be vocal. Be vocal in share them and be vocal about your agreement and your disagreement. Support ad hoc organizations when they are aligned. But because it's ad hoc, stay vigilant. Embrace, purely good organizations when you can find them. Obviously, support the Ayn Rand Center UK. Apollo Zeus is in for $2 and posts a dinosaur after denying that they actually existed. So he's blowing my mind, as so often happens. But embrace good organizations in just that way. Support the Ayn Rand Center UK. Obviously, support the Ayn Rand Institute. There's schisms and splits and all sorts of stuff going on. So you support whoever you believe is doing rational work in a rational direction. And there are other organizations too. The book Super Abundance just came out, Marian Tupy's new book. There are all sorts of organizations who are focused on human progress. Support these organizations. I know some of them have connections to Cato, and there's some things to be suspicious about there, but that's why I say support organizations when they're aligned, but be vigilant. Be outspoken about what you agree with and what you don't agree. And why? Why do I say this? Is that pragmatism? No. It's precisely why you need to be vigilant. I always say, fight fire with love. And coffee. No, when I say fight fire with love, I don't mean turn the other cheek. I don't mean love your enemy. What I mean is fight fire with values. Know what you're fighting, but far more important than knowing what you're fighting, know what you are fighting for. And keep that in mind all the time, what you are fighting for. And what you're fighting for isn't objectivism. Objectivism is the means. And it may be, like it is with me, it may be your passion. But I'm not fighting for objectivism. I'm fighting to spread objectivism because I'm fighting for this world. And I'm not fighting for this world. I'm fighting for this world because I'm fighting for my life on Earth. So make sure every action is selfish, that every action is an end in itself, or is at least part of a goal or a mission or a purpose that is an end in itself. On Sundays, 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir, that still stars that gal I hung out with in the dark during the power outage this week. I always have a post-it note of the week during our show, 5 Minutes, at the end of the show. And I'm going to bring it up again, even though I don't usually do this on Thursdays. I like to take a post-it note pad and write something on a post-it note And it's something I already know, but need to remind myself of throughout the week. And I'll stick it up on my bathroom mirror or sometimes on my desk. And this week's Post-it note said, "What are you doing? And why are you doing it?" And I'm a firm believer that rationality requires that in any given moment, you be able to ask yourself, and that you get in the habit of doing it, that you ask yourself, what am I doing? And why am I doing it? Regular listeners have heard this before. But this is also the way that we are going to win the battles in our lives with regard to the intellectual landscape out there. And we've got folks sharing other institutions. That's good. Our unsigned 32-bit individual says City Journal, Manhattan Institute. Not City Journal. Oh, typo. Yeah, City Journal. Good. Excellent. And by all means, share in the chat any organizations that you believe need or deserve your support. Obviously, ARI, obviously, ARCUK. And earlier today, if you haven't seen it already, you should, because it was fun. The Daily Objective did an episode on things worth spending your money on. If you're not already a member of the HBL, Harry Binswanger's list, he does whole Zoom meetings on things worth having, things worth buying, technology that's made his life easier. He invites people on to share theirs too. So it was fun to have an episode of TDO, the Daily Objective, about things worth spending money on. A couple of the things that came up, for example, is a personal trainer. If you're working out, consider having a trainer, spend money on it if you have to. Some of the obvious ones, things like books. Good episode, you should watch that. But yes, what are the organizations worth supporting, worth spending money on? So by all means, feel free to share some of those. Oh, he says, yes, I think they are good. Not polemic so much as reflective. Well, that's good too. Don't underestimate the value of that. So yes, make sure every action, oh, battery is dying, how strange. Make sure every action is selfish, intentional, know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And you can take over for what should have been the new left and the new right. In other words, the new middle. I'm going to keep using that expression just to tweak y'all. In the meantime, my battery is running out on my camera. I don't even understand that. That's all I want to say is know what you're doing, why you're doing it. Do it selfishly. Whatever it is you're doing, make sure you know what you're doing, why you're doing it, why it redounds to your own benefit. That is not only how you will live the best life, but it is how, in the end, we are going to win the intellectual battle. And as always, I wish you an outstanding life on Earth.